Hey everyone, I went viral today, and it wasn't because of me coughing on the mic. It's a bonus edition of Locked On Guardians. We're going to talk about the Shane Bieber of it all. So join us and join in.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the show. Funny story, before we went with this version of it, I forgot to hit record. So we got about all the way to the entrance video, and Justin's like, Jeff, you haven't hit record. So it's going to be one of those episodes. We're already there. For those who missed it, I had a tweet that when I deleted it, had over 100,000 engagements / views. The Cubs, the Mets, and the Reds fans picked up and ran with it. I was accused of holding water for the Guardians, of attempting to increase the trade value of Shane Bieber. I have that type of influence. And I quickly, when it came to this tweet, clarified my point. I had 3 tweets in a row to kind of explain what's going on with Bieber, what we are seeing through multiple sources in the national media, and just, logically. And I deleted it because of Cubs fans. That's just out there. That was the final straw. My favorite part was a Cubs splaining to me how the Guardians TV contract works and why Cleveland is going to be hemorrhaging money. And then they're like, name one team that's got a bad TV contract that's added anything this offseason. I'm like, well, the Cubs have added, or the Guardians have added more salary than the Cubs. He goes, that's not anything. I go, well, the Royals have added more salary. And then he threw out 2 salary numbers that were incorrect. So yeah, that was my day. And I just got tired of dealing with it. So I deleted the tweet. For those who are like, you've buried the lead, I have. So what does this tweet say? It basically said that if you look at what Ken Rosenthal has talked about, and I didn't mention the Rosenthal directly, if you look at Jim Bowden, these are people with connections into it. You just look at things logically. Shane Bieber's value right now is low. He's a B-level prospect. I feel like people are offering Cleveland not that much, viewing him similar to a salary dump, was my wording, because the general view is teams don't know what Shane Bieber is, right? He is the ultimate unknown. I can't recall ever having seen a player in this situation. The first thing that sets this off as something different is the fact that his arbitration number is only $12 million. And I say only $12 million because back in 2020, he looked like he'd be at 30. He looked like he'd be one of those guys setting the new high. What happened since then? He got hurt. He was awesome in 2021 until he got hurt. That's the year he broke Randy Johnson's record for most strikeouts of most games with 8 or more strikeouts in a row. He became he joined a group with Nolan Ryan, Bob Gibson, and I believe Sandy Koufax for having double-digit strikeouts in back-to-back opening days. And then he's fine in 2022. He's not a 1 anymore. He's a 2. He can't throw his curveball. And he comes out this year, and not only is the curveball not there, his strikeout rate, I hope I left this up, just to tell you where he was when he went on the injured list, and even this is with the bounce back at the end of the year. His K rate was, these are the players who were worse than him as starters: Kyle Gibson, Sandy Alcantara, Dane Dunning, Tajon Walker, Bryce Elder, Patrick Corbin, Miles Miklos, Jordan Lyles. That's it. Like, for a guy who was a strikeout king, he couldn't miss bats. His velocity's down. He can't trust his curveball. 2 of the last 3 years, he's been on the injured reserve. And I had so many people be like, Tyler Glasnow. When Tyler Glasnow is healthy, and yeah, that's not often, he has he's been better than Bieber over the last 3 years. And then on top of that, if Bieber doesn't come back and pitch this year, Shane Bieber would have 2 years with over. Justin. He's not Justin. He'd have 2 years of over 120 innings pitched to Glasnow's 1, due to injuries and other things. But for everyone making a big deal, Tyler Glasnow's thrown over 120 innings once. Bieber would have done it twice if he hadn't come back and made those starts at the end of the year. He would have 1 more. So his health is such an issue, and teams don't know what he is or what's wrong with him. And it's great he went the drive line, but people want data. And when I do talk to the last few connections I have, and it's not like I'm getting inside info, I'm just like, what's your view? If I talk to a friend who's a scout or a friend who's an agent, and the general view is like nobody knows Shane what he is anymore. Like no one has a good feel on him, and no one wants to trade for a player and give up something of value if you're not sure what he is. He is this, I've talked to people, and I had this debate, like who's more valuable, him or Lucas Giolito on the same contract, and talking to people in the game. It's interesting. People in and around the game who have like not like work for teams, but agents, media, things like that. Most trust Giolito more because of the health record and both of them having bad metrics this year. But fans trust Bieber, but that's also because I'm talking to Guardians fans. It's just a weird, hard situation. So this got away from me because I used the word salary dump, which is my fault. But the whole point of it was Cleveland isn't rushing to make a trade. There's a ton of arms on the market because they're not going to accept your poo-poo platter. As much as, unfortunately, the other fan bases read this as Cleveland needs to cut money because they are a poor franchise with a TV issue, and they're going to take whatever we're willing to give them. Whereas the whole point of the tweet was Cleveland isn't making a deal because the offers aren't good enough. And $12 million is a lot of money, but hey, you can pay $6 million and move him at the deadline. We just saw Thor, who was absolutely terrible and was basically sent home on a mental break, get his contract traded 1-for-1 with another player. Maybe it's not the ideal, but that was when that was 18 million. Like there's a team, basically the worst case scenario is you give him away at the deadline. If you make a trade now, you're not getting more than a backup.
So all this came today, I think, after watching, for me at least, was Ken Rosenthal in Fair Territory, and
which I didn't see.
He basically, and I texted you the gist of what he said, and I didn't add any blustery words to it. It was basically like, we'll see what the Guardians do, but teams don't have the same view of him as they did in 2020, which is fair because 2020 is a weird year. I feel like most teams are not really taking 2020 into a lot of account for things, but the industry generally seems to be down on him right now. And he said, we'll see what the Guardians do, as in no idea what they're going to do with Shane Bieber. I don't know if they know what they're going to do. I think they certainly, ideal scenario for Cleveland is definitely get an offer they like for Shane Bieber and trade him, because I do think, and this is the funny thing I put in our show notes, that it's the same old Bieber thoughts. None of this stuff is new. It's not like any of the stuff is new as of today or yesterday or of this week. And this is all stuff we've been hearing about all offseason. So the fact that this conversation keeps continuing to circle itself is kind of funny to me, because we're really not hearing anything new than we did 2 weeks ago, than 3 weeks ago. But the whole conversation is, Cleveland, I think, would like to trade him because they are a risk-averse franchise. They do not want to pay Shane Bieber $12 million this year and then be stuck with either paying $12 million for a guy who might get hurt, who might not be worth $12 million to them. In a vacuum, I should say. I think there's two schools of thought. It's worth $12 million in a vacuum, or worth $12 million to the team, because if they traded him and couldn't find an ideal replacement, like Xavier Curry, better than a dinged up Shane Bieber or a lesser version of Shane Bieber, I would still probably take the lesser version of Shane Bieber over 25 starts of Xavier Curry. No disrespect to Curry. I just think that's the gap between their talents at the moment and experience, especially for what Cleveland wants to do in 2023. But I think the ideal scenario, yes, is that Cleveland sheds the $12 million for Bieber because of the risk of what he might become this year. And it could be the same issue. He's missed 2 out of the last 3 seasons with significant arm injuries. People want to point to like the Kluber deal, and I say, okay, 2019 Kluber was not good, but it was so early that you weren't sure. The metrics didn't look good, but it was so early when he had that fluke injury happen that you just don't know. And
people
that was the first time
he was an ace though on the market that year.
That was the first time that Kluber really had an extended injury. Like, he had the back issue in 2017 that put him on the IL, and he came back and he was better, and then he wasn't as good in the ALDS. We all know about that now. But you were not getting a Corey Kluber that had a ton of arm problems. Like, he had a back issue and he had a fluky line drive off the arm. Shane Bieber has now had a shoulder issue and an elbow issue. Those are major injuries for a pitcher. And I know people are going to say, well, he hasn't had surgery. And that's important to note as well.
Maybe he
But-
should have. Is the question.
Yeah,
that goes
maybe
with
it's
this.
hard to say.
I mean, all of a
But
sudden
I
he can't
think-
throw his curveball anymore, and it's like, what is going on? That's part of the.
Yeah.
It's the big unknown.
I think the bottom line is that, again, Cleveland, I think an ideal world would like. I'm just speculating. I don't have any source on this. I just think I'm connecting the dots based on
100%. I
what
think
we've seen
logically.
in the past. They would like to get rid of the $12 million and maybe if we're lucky, parlay that elsewhere. But that's the ideal scenario: is you get a trade good enough to meet your standards. And the hard part on the match here is that I think Cleveland is definitely going to want to trade the 2022 version of Shane Bieber. And I think teams are trading for the 2024 version of Shane Bieber. And I don't think Cleveland is delusional about any of this. I'm not saying they think they're going to get 2022 value, but I don't think they're going to. Cleveland notoriously does not back off their trade demands. When they set a value on a player, they say, if you do not meet our value, we're not going to say we're going to come to your side of thinking. Because if they do, here's the thing. If Cleveland gets a sparse return for Shane Bieber, it is going to look like a salary dump. Maybe they do want to dump the salary. Maybe that is what they want to do, and they just haven't gotten the right offer yet, and they'll still do it. I don't know. But Cleveland typically sets a certain value on players, and if another team doesn't reach that value, they don't make the move. And I don't know. Should a team like Cleveland, should they be paying $6.5 or $7 million to Scott Barlow? Is it six? I think it's 6.5, right?
6.5, I believe. Or
Should
is
they
it
be paying?
No, it's 7 because they got rid of one from Inyel, so I believe it's 7. For
Okay.
Barlow.
So should this be a team concerned about paying Bieber $12 million this year if they are willing to spend $7 million on Scott Barlow and $4 million on Austin Hedges? Like, is that a team that should be concerned about $12 million for Shane Bieber? In my eyes, no, that should not be the case.
And to give a counter or just not an argument, give some context. $12 million is how much Kyle Gibson, $12 million with a $1 million buyout. So actually $13 million guaranteed. It's how much a 37-year-old Kyle Gibson got from the Cardinals, who was on that list of guys who can't miss bats, who was worth 2.6 WAR last year, where even though, Bieber had his issues, Baseball Reference WAR at least, it was worth 2.1 WAR. It's like he was better in Kyle. And that's part of the calculus, I think, is like $12 million actually for a back end starter anymore is a good deal on the open market. So you're not like, I saw people saying trade him and sign. So you're not signing. If you sign a starter, it's for 12 million and you get Kyle Gibson. So it doesn't quite compute that way, which is, and I think the question is, what's the bigger risk here? Is it trading him now at the nadir of his value and then seeing him rebound and realizing you could have gotten a much better return, and or he could have helped your team get to the postseason if you don't get there, or if you get there knowing that he could have helped drive it and you still would have gotten a draft pick, and that's the other thing too, like the draft pick is probably better than anything they're getting offered right now.
Right.
And or is it holding on to him and risk getting nothing? Part of the calculus of like holding on to him though is also then you have that proven starter. You don't have to lean into Ben Lively as your fifth. I mean, I'd rather lean into Blake Lively as my fifth than Ben Lively.
I could not make the joke or the innuendo I want to make.
I'll go with Erin Lively, her sister from the Teen Witch movie. Give me any of Wildcats.
I don't know who that is, but I'll definitely probably agree with you just based on name value alone. Even though this is a YouTube only episode, I'm not going to make that joke because that would be a Locked On Guardians After Dark joke that we cannot make on this show. But
I will say, just a small side note, complete to go off track. You need to go watch Wildcats for one of the greatest movie bloopers ever, where Woody Harrelson's in it, and he's obviously a white dude, and they show like a black person at the running back being him. It's like, here's Woody Harrelson, then clearly black, white. It's just one of those great no, just let it go through movie bloopers.
White men can't jump and white men can't play running back.
Well, no, it's just that they decided to make his stunt double African American. It's just it's wildly humorous that like everyone in that movie is like, that's fine. But
interesting editorial choices.
Just a fun, humorous point in the podcast episode about why I hated Twitter today.
Yeah. Why? Okay. So what is the least risky option for Cleveland right now? It's trading Bieber, right? It's trading him right now.
Yes.
getting
probably.
out front of the 12 million and getting whatever you can. That is the least risky option. And I did say Cleveland is a risk-averse franchise. They generally are. And I do think if they traded him right now, I do feel like it would be a salary dump. I mean, I can't say that and without knowing the return. Maybe there's a team out there that says, all right, fine, we want 1 year of Shane Bieber and we want to see what happens and we're willing to give up something of value. I don't know. I don't know those conversations. So I can't say, but I think the option with the least risk right now is for them not to pay him the $12 million. Again, I still think it's silly to be talking about worrying about paying him $12 million this year when you're paying $11 million to Scott Barlow and Austin Hedges. But this is why none of this makes any sense to me right now. You shouldn't be concerned about that. I understand that if Shane Bieber goes out this year and gets hurt or he pitches not so great, that your trade value is going to get worse if you want to trade him later in the year, or he's not pitching well enough to lead you to the playoffs. And then the qualifying offer is probably off the table because he won't be worth it. That's a very downhill way to go. And Cleveland typically doesn't let these players walk like this. There's Michael Brantley and Carlos Santana are the only examples, right? Of letting guys go through their walk here.
The one example I could come up with was that always comes back to me is Kelly Shoppach, because it reminds me of a similar situation where Kelly Shoppach had that huge year. And it was very obvious, like, this team wants to trade him. He's not the catcher of the future. Let's try to sell high. And the rest of the league's like, no, it's very obvious that he is not going to repeat this. So Cleveland was kind of stuck holding the bag. And then a year later, traded him for almost nothing after he fell back to earth. Now, I'm sure
he came back one more time, just saying.
Well, yeah.
He was good enough to come back one more time.
He did, but he never got near that. And I don't say that as a negative to say like Bieber can't get back to there, but I more bring it up for the fact that it's an example I think of where they did try to extract, and there was someone before that too, because I remember I had a whole series of these I wrote about back at IBI back in the day, where they would hold on instead of getting any value, taking less than peak. So we've seen them go both ways with this. I personally, maybe my own personal feelings are coloring this. I feel like right now, if the Dodgers needed a starter, they traded a borderline starter and a platoon potential starting outfielder, for Glasnow. And don't send me your baseball reference things about how Glasnow and Bieber are the same. They're not. Bieber's just not going to net that. And I know that they also took on Margot, but there's so many negatives. And going back to like the draft, and when I was more, clocked into to teams and everything else, teams look for reasons to not acquire talent. They're not looking for reasons to acquire players. They're looking for reasons to take players off lists. Bieber has so many negatives because it's not just elbow. It's not just shoulder. It's not just injury history. It's questions about what has gone on with that curveball. Why is his velocity down? Why can't he miss bats? Like, all of those add up where teams are just not going to give you a big return. Like with the Reds, people keep bringing up the Reds. It's like, hey, maybe you can get Jake Fraley and a pitching depth piece. Like, is that what you want? Because that's probably the range-ish it's going to go. Because teams don't care about 2020 anymore. That was too long ago. No. What he did in 2020 has zero value nowadays.
And that's why I also said, like, in a vacuum, is Shane Bieber worth $12 million? I don't know. But there is an argument to be made that he is worth that money to Cleveland because of what I said. Like, is it worth whatever Shane Bieber is in 2024, whether it's, the guy we saw in 22, is it the guy we saw in 2023, but he's healthy? Like, if you can get him to pitch at 2023 levels, but you get 30 starts out of him, that's still probably more valuable than Xavier Curry or Hunter Gaddis or whoever else you want to throw in that fifth spot. Certainly more valuable than Ben Lively. I don't think that's, again, no shot at those guys personally. Just the gap is the talent gap right there. And I think, Curry's good in the role he's in. So that $12 million right there makes him more he's more valuable to Cleveland based on that than he is in a trade. And I think we've said this before. Again, a lot of this is not a lot of new thoughts. We're not saying anything that hasn't been said, that we haven't said before, that other people who are in the know, like, if Ken Rosenthal is saying that on his media outlets, because he's got a million these days, which, hey, good, he's a good guy, so he should have all those outlets you should be listening to. But if he's saying we'll see what the Guardians do, meaning he doesn't really know, I believe they don't really know based on what Ken Rosenthal knows and who he knows versus any account that wants to tell me that a trade is in place or something. I don't know.
And even a year ago with him, or 2 years ago, it's like his chase percentage, his whiff percentage, those were good. Those were high. This year, he's always been susceptible to the hard hit, but you go through, it was always chase, whiff, and K were high. He caused guys to miss. And it's interesting that his extension this year was actually the best of his career in terms of league percentage. And it actually had more extension this year than the year before. But his hard hit, his average exit velocity, I don't know, his batting average. Well, it matters if, like, did this mess with something? Like, did somehow him getting extra extension, he's not doing, is he tipping something? I'm not sure. Like, and his fastball and breaking value are okay, but his off-speed pitches just did not fool anyone. And he got hit. And when he got hit hard. Guys picked it up easily. No one is chasing. No one is whiffing. No one is K'ing. And that's what he needed. Like, that's what made him effective, was the K rate. When those aren't there, he's a 5. He was a 5 last year outside of those, last 2 starts. And I know people are going to ask, no, 2 starts don't change things. Like, it's nice, but no team is going to be like, you know what, those last 2 starts, we're going to throw out everything we saw the rest of the year.
No. I think it's interesting what you said, too, about the curveball his breaking stuff wasn't fooling anybody, because that's kind of what he said is why he was going fastball heavy, because his breaking stuff wasn't working. For what it's worth, the slider and curveball last year did hold hitters to a WOBA under 300. So those 2 pitches were still valuable. The slider was +3 run value. The curveball was a 0.
His breaking run value was good, but the off-speed value overall was poor.
Oh, so that's just changeup. Well,
yeah.
He's never had a good changeup. He's joked for like 5 years running now that he's going to work on his changeup because it's so bad.
It's almost a pitch that should be like scrapped.
Yeah, his cutter was really bad last year. The cutter is what got him in the most trouble last year. 469 slugging percentage, and he threw it the second most amount of time last year. Maybe, look, 2022, his fastball was still pretty rough. It had a negative run value. Hitters were slugging 434, not great. Slider though
was a weapon.
+12. Run value, 287 slugging. So the slider was still a good pitch for him the last 2 years. I'm not sure why he replaced it with the cutter last year. Maybe it had something to do with the shoulder or elbow pain he was having. That very well could be it. I don't know. Again,
it's just so weird that, like, even in 2022, his second best pitch, the curveball. And what's interesting too is you go into 2021 when he got hurt, and you go into 2023 when he got hurt, and what pitch is not as high? It's a curveball.
Yeah, I mean, he's consistently thrown less curveballs since going back to 2020.
Yeah.
Like 2020, that's pretty much was his main pitch, and then he's gone away from that. Who knows if that's injuries or not? So
it's just weird. That was arguably his second best pitch, and now he just
arguably I think it was his best pitch. But in the minors, it certainly was. I don't know what's going to happen here. Like teams, I think, are going to prioritize. You have Yamamoto, who obviously is in his own category right now. You have Snell out there. You have Montgomery out there, Amanja, and then you've got Corbin
Giolito.
Giolito. Corbin Burns is going to be traded probably.
Dylan Cease, Jesus Luzardo was on the trade market. The one thing I got drastically wrong was when I said there wasn't going to be pitching this offseason. There's so much pitching. And basically the one thing I can tell you now is anyone who's telling you that definitely is going to happen or that something is imminent, that is the one you shouldn't trust. Anyone who's like 100%. I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at all of the sources. I'm talking to the few people I know. None of them are insiders. It's me just talking to people who've been around the game for a while, as reporters, as people who have worked for teams, as people who currently work for teams. I'm not getting inside information, but it's just like, what's the general view? And he is a conundrum. There's never been quite a situation like his where there is this many red flags and none of them are due to character. Like that's not the issue. It's like normally we talk about a bunch of red flags where there's other stuff. Like he's a great human being, a great worker, one of the best people I ever met in my time in the minors as a player.
Absolutely.
When I got to interview him. So it's all that other stuff. It's like I said, it's the laundry list. And personally, I would, not just because I'm a Guardians fan, but again, he's a good dude. I'd love to see him get back on track. He's a great story. He's a great person here or anywhere. I'd love to see him get it together, but nobody knows what he is. And that's what leans into, again, I think Rosenthal's dead on, where teams, going to Driveline doesn't instantly change his value. It's good that he's going and working. Anything in the offseason is good, but until he shows up in spring training, it's hard to say who he is. And there are so many pitchers out there. So many pitchers. I think it's hard.
Yeah. My only observations, again, are just on past behavior. Like, if you want a good predictor of what they'll do in the future, it's what they've done in the past. And that would be to trade Shane Bieber. But again, like I keep saying, I think he is more valuable to Cleveland right now because he pitches well. You either rebuild the trade value or you're winning, and you need that because, Lord only knows what's going to happen with Tristan McKenzie. I'm hoping the best for him and a healthy year this year because, as good, nice as Shane Bieber is, Tristan McKenzie is one of my favorite humans that I've ever talked to in the minors too. And, just what I see him doing in the community, I like that. But, we have no idea what his health is going to look like in 2024 either. And then you got 3 rookies who we really like, but they're rookies, and there's a lot of unknown going into the next year.
Someone's going to have a sophomore slump. Like, it's just inevitable.
One
of those 3 is going to, one of them might get hurt. I mean,
yeah, pitchers get hurt. Look at you had 14 starting pitchers a year ago. I think are maybe due for a little bit of positive health regression. But right now, your options, if someone gets hurt, are, even with Bieber in the rotation, are Ben Lively, Curry, Gaddis, and then Cantillo, who's got his own past concerns. You cannot count on anything
health and control issues
this year. Yeah, and as much as I like Cantillo, I like a lot, but you can't go into the season counting on anything from Daniel Espino. No. And beyond that, it's Will Dion maybe. I don't know. It's a lot of risk. So if
a year ago, 4/5 of the rotation was hurt, and one could argue the first rookie who should have been up was Espino if he's healthy, because he's the one you had to 40-man add. Yeah. So it's like, not only was it 4/5 of the rotation, it was 5/6 of who the likely step up pieces were. Like, got hurt.
It was Espino, and then it was Allen, and then Bivey forced their hand, but also had Espino been healthy, they could have held off on him. And they certainly did not want to go to Williams when they did. We'll talk about that with starting pitchers when we get to that episode, I'm sure. So, nothing new. I'm just, like I said, operating off past behavior. But I also think it's silly to worry about $12 million for Shane Bieber if you're paying a combined $11 million to Hedges and Scott Barlow. So I just think he's more valuable to Cleveland's pitching staff. And if he builds that value, and you're not playing well, you can trade him. And the Jordan Montgomery trade proves that,
which was a really nice trade.
You can get good value back. It was. And if you don't trade him and he pitches well and you go to the playoffs and whatever, the qualifying offer's on the table, you give it to him, he walks, everybody, parts ways and says, thanks for your time. But if he pitches badly, then I don't know, maybe you still trade him if he's healthy and you get less, but less is better than, if he pitches, let's say he's healthy all year for 30 starts, whatever. And his ERA is 3.80 like it was in 2023. And his expected ERA, which is even worse at 4.83. If you're not in contention, you trade that for whatever you can, because whatever you get in a trade will be better than, you're not going to give him the qualifying offer at that point. So you might as well trade
that would still be more value than now, because not only is it a starter who's
less money.
He's only going to cost $6 million, which is going to be valuable to teams that are up against it in terms of luxury.
And he'll prove, and in that scenario, he proves he's healthy, which availability is the best availability, or the best ability is availability. So if he proves he's healthy this year, his stock goes up. If he pitches as well as average as he did a year ago, you still get something.
The stock is still up.
Than it is right now. That's where I would say. Okay.
Basically, barring injury.
None of these thoughts are new. They're just recycled, and I don't understand how what happened today happened, but whatever. We had a draft question. We said we weren't going to make this a whole episode, and it ends up being a whole episode because that's just who we are. We had a draft question though. I thought was a good one to address. I wanted to wait till Friday when we talk draft, but since we have a time now, we can answer it. It came from, I have to find the comment, Alonzo Gish from our yesterday's episode, or Tuesday's episode.
He's an every day or two.
Yeah. Okay. So he wanted us to explain why draft pool money has exponential value. Why does additional money carry more value to Cleveland, who has a lot of bonus pool money that would be to a team that has less? So my scenario is this: I talked about this before, the Cam Collier thing from 2 years ago, where a lot of people thought he'd be a top 5 pick, maybe a top 10 pick.
I had him 3rd on my board, I want to say.
There you go. And he ends up getting what, like 17 to the Reds or something? I forget where he ends up.
Yeah, something like that. It was
there were
maybe
some
even
people who were
19 to
very
the Reds.
Yeah, so there were some people really flummoxed by that. And basically what happened was the Reds had a ton of money in their draft pool, and they were like,
18
hey,
to the Reds.
and they were like, hey, we will give you this amount of money for a bonus. And because he had, and Collier had leverage because he was a 17-year-old playing JUCO ball.
He got the
graduated high school early,
highest bonus in the first round,
which is crazy.
At 18.
So he graduated high school early. He plays JUCO ball. He's got a lot of leverage. He can go back to JUCO ball the next year. He can transfer to a 4-year university. He doesn't have to sign. So his advisor, his agent, because he's in college, I don't know, his advisor, he can't have an agent because he's in college, whatever. So the NCAA or whatever NJCAA rules. But his advisor says, hey, the Reds are offering $9 million. What are you offering? And if the Mariners or the Marlins or whoever who was interested in him above 19, they were like, hey, we're not paying him $9 million. Okay, well, then my client's not going to sign with you. So all these other teams were like, okay, we're not going to draft Cam Collier because we're not going to sign him for that money because the Reds had a bigger offer to him. So he drops to 19, the Reds sign him, boom. That's kind of how these
and I want to throw in another
negotiations go.
Just 2015, and that's the year the Astros got the number 2 pick for the failure to sign Brady Aiken. They also were terrible in that time, so they had Kyle, the 5th overall pick. So they take Bregman and Kyle Tucker, 2 very good players, give them nice contracts. But then they come back in the comp round and sign Daz Cameron, who was supposed to be the 1st overall pick in this draft if you looked from years in the past. Like, he was the hot guy, hot name. And Daz Cameron got paid. He got, I'm sorry, 6th highest bonus in the first round. So the highest bonus was Swanson, then went to Bregman. Tucker had the tied for 4th highest, and tied for 5th highest with Daz Cameron. So they had 3 of the 6 highest contracts, technically 5 highest contracts in the first round, because they had that extra pool money. When they get Daz Cameron, who many people were kind of shocked was still on the board in the comp round, you can slide talent. 2 years ago, Baltimore thought they were going to slide. Why am I blanking on the Florida outfielder? To them, and then Boston drafted him and ignored the agent, and he went back to school. It's going to annoy me. But this happens, and having that money allows you to get more. That's why it's exponential value. More money means more picks that you can sign and give money to. You're buying players with these selections.
You're buying them down the board. You're getting that. Yeah. You're getting teams to pass on them and getting to your next pick, basically. So the more money you have,
Nolan Jones. That's what they did with him.
They ended up buying Nolan Jones. They saved money on Will Benson in the first round, and they used that surplus to offer Nolan Jones a big bonus. And the word probably got around other teams what Cleveland was offering. They didn't want to offer. So they skipped playing.
Jude Fabian. That was the guy I couldn't think of.
Judd Fabian, yeah. And here's the thing with college players. This doesn't work with college players because you don't have to, because they don't have a lot of leverage. This kind of thing only works with high school. So let's say Cleveland takes a college player in the first round.
Baltimore did it with draft eligible
Jackson
sophomore.
Holiday. That's true. No, Jackson Holiday.
No, I was saying with the Jude Fabian of it all, where he told Boston, screw you, and went back to school.
Well, that's a very rare occurrence. That was a mistake on his part, I would say. Not listening to the agent or the advisor, whatever you want to call it.
No, it was the team refused to listen to the advisor.
Oh, well, that's very bizarre. I don't know. Yeah, they drafted him anyway. Okay, so the team was kind of stupid and thick-headed there. But yeah, this works more often with prep players because they have more leverage, and you can give them their bonus demands and get them down further. So if Cleveland, the day is going to come, like Cleveland's going to pick either Travis Mazzana or JJ Weatherholt or Nick Kurtz, and they're not going to sign for whatever the assigned bonus value is because that's just how it works. Someone's going to be like, oh, look at that. They went cheap and they didn't give them the full bonus. No, it's because whatever they do with the first pick affects what they do at 36. They use that leftover money to get a player in the second round or the 36th pick, which is a Comp A pick. Or Comp A, right? It's Comp A? 36?
Yeah.
You use that pick and you pick somebody with that money you have that maybe would have gone to college. Like, you have that extra money now, and this guy might have had a strong commitment to this college, and you're like, well, guess what? We have the money. Here, how much is it worth you to skip college and come play pro ball for us? If you don't have that money, then you're not doing that.
And in a draft class like this one, again, this is our bonus video, so we can go a little longer. Let's say,
can we though? Because they're pulling these to the. Well, I guess we don't care. If
no,
they
they're
pull them
not,
to the
because we're gonna have
panel.
two of, and we're not having all the stuff in it. So this one isn't up to be pulled anyways. But you know, this is a draft class where the prep group isn't great. It's not strong. Now, I'm not saying you're gonna necessarily pull a Connor Griffin or someone else or a PJ Morlando, who I think is the top prep hitter in this class down the board. But you might still be able to pull like one of these kind of that next tier, like Slade Caldwell, who if he was 6'1" instead of 5'8", he would be in that discussion for the first overall pick. I strongly believe that. Like he's pound for pound, he's the best prep player in the class. You know, Noah Franco, the two-way guy, maybe Cam Aniti. It's like you can get one of those guys pulled to that pick, who most places is a top 30 guy, and you're going to get him at 36. And you know what? In round 2, you can do the same. You can go and still go over slot. And that's why adding more picks, getting more value is an exponential, because the more money you have, the more you can do this, the more you can kind of force the board your way. You own the draft, and that's incredibly valuable. And that's why I'm all for adding more. Like trade Bieber to the Reds to get more comp picks. You know, every trade for us involved more comp picks, because it accentuates what you can do so much. Though I mean, we already know, like second or third round, Matt Ager is going to the Cleveland Guardians. That's my early put it on the board name.
I'm with you.
Throw that in here. But listen, I don't want us to get demonetized, so I did pull up the funny GIF, but I'm not going to put it in the video, even though it's 10 seconds. I'm going to show it to Justin after this ends, but I will put a link to the GIF so you can see what I'm talking about, the hilarious scene from the movie, and you can also make fun of Justin for not being familiar with the younger or the elder Lively, if you're my age, because she was like everywhere for a time. But I'm gonna link it because it's hilarious. And after I get done recording here, I'm gonna show it to Justin because it's great. It's like one of my all-time favorite movie bloopers. So just had to share that. Thank you all for sharing, joining in. I know people used to love our long shows, so I hope you got to enjoy this post episode. Talk about it, discuss it. And here's the thing: could I be wrong? Absolutely, I am wrong all the time. But I will say, much like baseball, I'm about a 300 hitter. I have a pretty decent percentage, and that's just the way it goes. I'm going to get some wrong, I'm going to get some right. Like I said, 100% wrong on how this free agent depth would work, and that's why I deserve that. But I think we have explained where we are. And again, it's the holiday season. Let's just be kind. Can we bring back the idea that kindness is okay? Thank you all for joining us. We've been amazed by the numbers. Honestly, the numbers have been continuing strong. So thank you to everyone who's joined in, everyone who's enjoying this. We really appreciate all of that. I've got 3 more days to teach. I hope you out there have a great holiday season. We got one more show. We're going to talk draft. So make sure comments or things you want us to do about the draft, that'll come up for our next show. And
we'll take questions for the draft show. We'll take questions for the draft show. Okay.
I forgot that it was on loop. But thank you all for being a part of the Locked On Guardians team. Someone drop us an iTunes review. That hasn't happened in a really long time. So do us that favor. Make sure you like and subscribe. Hit the little bell and notification, and go.